Welcome, Pewter Report readers, listeners, and viewers to a Tuesday edition of the Pewter Report podcast. I am Scott Reynolds from pewterreport.com, and along with me to talk about Bucs linebackers, outside linebackers, inside linebackers, is one of our inside guys, Matt Matera, fresh off a return trip from the Senior Bowl. Matt, how was it in Mobile out there?
Oh, I absolutely loved it. It was an awesome time going there with John and Casey. And we met some really cool people. Got to see, for the first time in a long time, our alumni, Trevor Sikkema, got to see
That's
him
right.
in person. I'd been talking to Trevor, but to see him in person was really great. And a lot of great players, prospects, everyone that we were looking at. It was a very fun time. Forget the weather. It doesn't matter. We were there to watch football, and that's what we accomplished. And I hope everyone enjoyed the podcast and the stories that we put out there. But it was it was an excellent time. I really had so much fun.
Yeah. Well, and I would have loved to have made it, but I had COVID, so I couldn't go. So,
Yeah, unfortunately.
yeah, a
We
little
missed
mild.
you. We missed you for
Well,
sure. We had all
I
that
miss
room at the
Mobile.
Airbnb. We
Right.
definitely missed you there. So
Yeah,
next year.
I love going to Mobile. I love the barbecue there, and of course, watching football. Right. So it's one thing to go to the combine and watch all of the testing and the guys running around in their underwear, but it's another thing when the pads come on and you actually see some football there. And here it is, February. We are a year and a day after the Bucs won the Super Bowl, right? I mean, it's
Yeah.
been a year and a day, and it's crazy to think. And I wrote about this in a reflection piece about the Super Bowl on yesterday on PeterReport.com. The Bucs coaching staff is still pretty much intact. I mean, Byron Leftwich, we kind of thought that he would get that Jacksonville job. I think he was the front runner. If he would have maybe opted to work with Trent Baalke, he would have been the head coach, but probably a good move because Baalke doesn't have a great reputation. Um, Todd Bowles had plenty of interviews, right? I mean, Minnesota, Las Vegas,
Mm-hmm.
Chicago, Jacksonville, and he didn't get a job either. So the Bucs retained both their coordinators, but today there was some news, and apparently it's being finalized right now that the Bucs will lose Mike Caldwell, their linebackers coach, inside linebackers coach. So it's very fitting today that we're talking about linebackers, Matt, and Mike Caldwell is a player who he played for 11 years in the league. Some of that time was in Philadelphia with the Eagles, and Doug Peterson was a backup quarterback there. And then those guys spent 1 year together as players on the same team. Then both worked on Andy Reid's staff in Philadelphia, got to know each other quite well, became friends, and that's just how this works, right? You get the connections in this league, and coaches like familiarity. So Doug Peterson is going to be hiring Caldwell to be the defensive coordinator for the Jaguars. So
Right.
interesting
And
news there.
Scott, it's absolutely crazy as you just lined it out that go after this season, although the Bucs did not win the Super Bowl, they still had a margin of success. Won
Yeah,
the division for the first time in a decade, franchise career best in wins. If you were to put money on which defensive or which coach in general is going to leave, I don't think anyone really would have had Mike Caldwell as the first guy off the board. I mean, remember too, a lot of the conversation, especially that you and John were having on this podcast,
right.
was if Byron Leftwich leaves, what's the power struggle going to be between coaches on the Bucs coaching staff who will leave for Jacksonville
That's
and
right.
who will stay in Tampa Bay? And now going into the season, while it obviously hurts losing a coach like Mike Caldwell, especially at a position that we'll be talking about today that is super important for this team, outside of Caldwell, the whole coaching staff is there. So there's still
Yeah.
a lot of optimism to have there with the Bucs as long as they find a quarterback. But we have months and months to talk about that.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. And I think the thing too is when you look at the linebacker position, it's interesting now, right? Because with Mike Caldwell departing to Jacksonville, and this is a coach that has waited a long time to become a defensive coordinator. He went with Todd Bowles from the Arizona coaching staff to the Jets
Mm-hmm.
to become the assistant head coach in New York. But Casey Rogers, the defensive line coach, was the defensive coordinator under Todd Bowles. So it's a thing where Bowles really held Caldwell in high regard. And I think if Bowles if Bowles had left to get a head coaching job, I think Caldwell would have gone with him to become a defensive coordinator. I think Casey Rogers
Would
had
have
his
left
shot with
too.
the Jets, right?
Mhm.
They probably would have switched spots. I think Rogers, who is longtime friends with Bowles, would have been the assistant head coach, and Caldwell would have been the defensive coordinator. So I think that's probably what it would have happened. So Caldwell was kind of in demand. And again, it's who you know, right? And Doug Peterson's a big ally. So it does create an opening now on the Bucs coaching staff, right? For who's going to be the inside linebackers coach. It's interesting to note that James Beer, and we'll be writing about this on pewterreport.com after the podcast. Betcher is he is the 49ers defensive assistant. He is like a run game specialist. So he's not a full-fledged coach, but he is an assistant on the 49ers staff. And so I believe that he reunited with Bruce Arians. He was the outside linebackers coach for years in Arizona, actually in 2013 and 2014. Then when Todd Bowles left to become the Jets coach, then Betcher was elevated to the role of defensive coordinator for the Cardinals. So this is one of Bruce's guys. And I think that Betcher is going to get the call to come to Tampa. And I believe Betcher will be on this staff. Don't know that to be fact. I'm
Right,
using
because
some educated guessing here, but it makes sense.
Scott, because my only question is I think he's still under contract with the 49ers. So the only thing I'm not sure about is that he wouldn't be leaving the 49ers to become the defensive coordinator for the Bucs, because
Right.
Todd Bowles obviously has that position. So I'm not exactly sure how it works if he could just, you see it all the time in college football, coaches just jump ship and go everywhere. But
Right.
as far as like assistant coaches, you don't see it as much, but clearly to learn or to be in the coaching tree and the staff of Bruce Arians, I think almost any coach across the league, there's only so many. You got the Tomlin coaching tree, you got the Belichick coaching tree, and Bruce Arians has his branches spread out across this league as well.
Now
So
you're seeing Shanahan's as well, and all of that, But I think with Betcher, because he is a lower level assistant, I think that the 49ers would probably allow him, unless they want to promote him from within. But I think they would allow him to take a position coaching job. That's just my guess. We'll see. I've got some inquiries, haven't heard anything yet, but it might be a thing where Larry Foote, who played linebacker for Pittsburgh back in the day, maybe he goes to the inside linebacker spot and coaches Devin White, Lavonte David, and then maybe Betcher moves to outside linebackers where he's more familiar, or it might just be a thing where Betcher slides in and deals with the inside linebackers. Again, he does have coordinator experience. He knows Todd Bowles' system quite well. So it would be a natural fit there. And of course, when you're the inside linebackers coach, you and the defensive coordinator are working with Devin White and Lavonte David and getting the calls and making sure that everything is kosher in terms of what you're calling and what you're seeing out there on the field. So that's really the big Bucs news today was that particular move there, and we'll see. But we went to look at the Pro Bowl, right? And I'm with you and John. I think I don't want to speak for you, but I mean, it's a joke of a game, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you go in with expectations of you're not really going to see much, you understand the players aren't going to hit each other or anything like that. If you go in with those expectations, I don't think you're really going to get let down. And that was kind of my thought process going in and watching it. I just wanted to see the Bucs make some fun plays, which they did. Mike Evans scored a touchdown.
That's right.
Antoine Winfield Jr. with not only the pick six, but again, it was off of Patrick Mahomes and the fake lateral, which was so much fun to see. So as a consumer of the game, I really enjoyed it. I don't think the NFL is really going to change much though, because the ratings were through the roof.
Yeah,
which was fantastic, and they make money.
Because I'm an old man, and I remember when it used to actually be a game. Like people would get hurt in the Pro Bowl.
Did Leroy Selman get hurt?
He did. He suffered a season or a career-ending back injury. Drew Brees injured his elbow at the Pro Bowl, which really, in a sense, prompted him to to move on. And Sean Taylor laid out a punter. I mean,
that's one of the
yeah.
greatest plays of all
It
time.
is.
It was Brian Moorman, I believe, was the punter
Yeah.
on a fake punt. So yes, those plays are awesome. The issue is there's no incentive for the NFL to be like, oh, we need to hype up the Pro Bowl,
and
because
really make
everyone
it a
watches
game.
football as it is. Where the NHL, they really have to spice it up and
Right.
change different things. What I will say, though, sorry, go ahead.
I must say, I mentioned the Pro Bowl, and Devin White was a guy who looked like he cared out there, right? He was all over the field, right?
He made a lot of
something like that.
He made a lot of, and I'm putting quotations for anyone listening on audio. He made a lot of tackles in that game. But yeah, like he was moving around. He was having
He grabbed
fun.
the flag, Matt, is what he did.
Yes.
They're playing flag football. He grabbed a lot of flags, right?
Yes, he absolutely was. But one last thing I want to say about the Pro Bowl is, while I don't think they'll change much, if there's anything or anyone that could really start getting a change into more competitiveness, it's when you see guys like Deion Sanders saying, this is BS. Like, I'm not enjoying watching this. Shannon Sharp has been outspoken about it. Pat McAfee tweeted about it, saying that it stinks. Eventually, if you get enough public outcry, maybe they'll change it a little bit. I mean, the Giants literally fired their head coach because everyone on Twitter was like, this guy is not good. But yeah, we'll get to the linebackers now. As you said, Devin White was really one of the most hyper energetic guys out there. His saying is get live 45. And there's another thing that really gets you and I energized for the show.
There's no doubt about it, Matt. And that's Celsius, right? It's the tasty beverage that comes in a lot of flavors. What are you rocking there today, Matt?
I'm rocking the jackfruit.
Gotcha. I've
been on that kick lately.
One of my go-to favorites. I can't really drink orange juice anymore because I got this acid reflux problem that messed up my voice last summer. And so I'm getting old and I really can't have all that citric acid, but I love the taste of orange juice. And so I kind of get it in Celsius. And Matt, that's one of the great things about Celsius. Not only does it have no sugar, no preservatives, it's packed with flavor.
Yes.
And you know what I did? I went ahead and I purchased the variety pack. I haven't done that in a long time, right? And I've got a cola flavor that I'm going to have tomorrow. I haven't had it in a long time, and trust me, it tastes just like cola. I'm not going to name any brand names, but it tastes just like that. I had grape the other day. Fuji apple pear, one of my favorites. The strawberry guava, that's an amazing flavor. And the great thing about that right now is if you're listening to this podcast, and we'll have some of this on social media here too, Celsius is doing a giveaway for Valentine's Day for our Pewter Report readers, listeners, and viewers. And all you have to do is go to Celsius.com/PewterVDay. That's Valentine's Day. Pewter V-Day. So Celsius.com/PewterVDay. And that link is in the description below. So you can check that out. All you have to do is enter your name and email address. That's it. Enter your name and email address. And they're going to pick 5 winners, and you're going to get a free case of strawberry guava, free. And we'll draw those names on Valentine's Day, which is next Monday. So it's going to be pretty cool.
Yeah, make sure you check it out. I mean, Scott, there is Celsius, and like everywhere I go, Walmart, the local bodega right next to me, any of the gas stations, Celsius is all over the place. So I love that it's spreading so much. We love when the fans tweeting us their favorite flavor. I personally like the orange, my favorite, because it tastes exactly like orange. As you said, the flavors, all the different flavors that you just mentioned. There is no other energy drink or competitors or whatever you want to say that have that distinct flavor that you don't even need to think twice. We should do a blindfold test one day where we're like, like this is kiwi guava, this is such and such, because it's really uncanny. So thank you to Celsius for being the sponsor. I've enjoyed it gratefully. Yep,
no doubt about it. So let's talk a little bit about the Bucs linebackers, Matt. When you look at Tampa Bay's linebackers, right? I mean, Lavonte David is still getting the job done. I mean, he's had a phenomenal career in Tampa, and really didn't show much signs of slowing down. I don't think. I thought he had a very good season in Tampa Bay last year. He's not the guy that's going to lead the Bucs in tackles anymore, right? He's not that guy that is going to get 140 tackles, in a season. That's not really what he's schemed to do. This particular defense, this time Bulls defense, as that kind of weak side inside linebacker. That's Devin White's role right now, and that's why you saw Devin White once again lead the team in tackles. He had 128. Lavonte had 97. Now Lavonte missed some games, right?
Scott, so close to 100 tackles after missing all those games. I believe he only played in 12. That was the first time Lavonte David did not reach 100 tackles since, I believe, I was looking it up before. I believe it's 2016 where he got into the 80s. But incredible, he was only 3 away despite missing so many games this season.
Missed 5 games, had that bad foot injury.
Yeah.
Had a couple sacks, right? We didn't see Lavonte make the plays in coverage this year that I think we've seen in the past. He's usually good for an interception or 2 in a season. He had 3 pass breakups, no interceptions this year. Did force 2 fumbles. That's Lavonte's style, right? Had a fumble recovery. But at some point in time, when you look at Lavonte and there's he'd signed the extension. There's still some time left on the clock, on his NFL clock. But we saw it this year with Kevin Minter. Now, Minter is a backup player. He's not in Lavonte's class whatsoever, right? But the thing with Lavonte is he's going to start slowing down at some point in time. At some point in time, he's going to be a step slow in coverage, a step slow getting to the hole. I don't think it's next year, but I'd love to see this team have a plan in place to get another linebacker on deck. Now, they spent 2 day 3 picks on some special teamers, on KJ Britt and on Grant Stewart. Stewart really flashed. He led the team in special teams tackles. He's like a wild man out there. Covering kicks is one thing. Taking on guards and shedding them and trying to maintain your gap and get some run fills, that's another. I'm not sure Stewart or Britt is a long-term answer as a possible replacement for Lavonte David, though.
Right. And the key with Lavonte David, as you just put out there, where he might start being a step slow, is you want to catch it before it's too late, if you get what I'm saying. You don't want 2 seasons from now. And you see the Patriots do this all the time, where they get rid of Richard Seymour, and they get rid of guys a little bit too early, and everyone's like, what are you doing? And then you see them next season on their new team. You're like, oh, all right, yeah, that kind of made sense. And it's tough because Lavonte David obviously is an all-time Buc. He's a Bucs lifer, and you'd really hate to see him go. But that's why if you were to draft a linebacker in an earlier round, it's almost like that thing, and you might hear people say this all the time. It's like when you have an old dog and then you see it slowing down, but then you bring in a puppy and it kind of like rejuvenates the older dog a little bit.
That's right.
You could see that in Lavonte David, and I'm not saying Lavonte David has lost a step yet. The big thing, though, again, as you mentioned with Stewart and Grant, obviously Stewart, everything that Grant Stewart and KJ Britt. Yeah. I said the same player. Yep. Everything that Grant Stewart was doing on special teams, I mean, he's a lock to make this team as far as just the role that he's had. And let's face it, who doesn't love when his hair is flying and he's making those tackles? Britt, I like his size, but he's a little too slow. Like, I like his physicality. I wish he had the speed and like the enthusiasm.
If you could take Stewart and Britt, make them into one player, you would have a starting caliber player.
Absolutely.
Right? With the size of Britt and the speed and the tenacity of Stewart, I totally agree. The problem is
we haven't come up with that science yet. Yeah.
Right. We're not there yet. We're working on vaccines and we're working on gene splicing and stuff, but we're not there yet. So what I think the thing is do you bring Kevin Minter back? I love Minter. I think he's a fantastic locker room guy. He's a great mentor. He's been a very good mentor to Devin White, having that LSU connection. Yep. He's been a special teams captain. I just don't know that what you see on the field from him is enough. I don't know that he is a starting caliber player. And what I mean by that is when it's the next man up mentality, right? When Devin White is out or when Lavonte David is out, Kevin Minter is in. And there is a noticeable drop off in terms of athleticism, in terms of speed, in terms of he gets targeted in the passing game. He just can't make the plays. He's 30 now. He's not 27 anymore. And I just think that they need to have somebody in there that could be a little bit more competent and bring a little bit more athleticism to the field should something happen to David or White next year.
Right. I agree. And the point I was making before about Lavonte and you want to catch it before he loses a step, I feel like Minter, this was the season where we kind of all saw him play and thought,
Yes.
okay, maybe his time is a little bit done. And you know what? Honestly, if they only had one rookie linebacker last season, I would be inclined to be like, okay, let's bring in Minter for one more year so he can really be that veteran presence, that teacher to whatever linebacker, if the Bucs decide to draft the inside linebacker, he could be that teacher, that mentor for him. Obviously,
Right.
Lavonte and Devin White would be too, but
Yep.
I think there's something about a backup helping a fellow backup that could really help that situation. But again, because Grant Stewart is so great on special teams, you don't necessarily need Kevin Minter there in that role anymore.
Right.
And I think another thing too, and this just speaks for the whole Bucs team, not even the linebacker position, but if they were to draft a young guy, bring him in, sure, it's a bit of a risk to have your backup linebacker outside of Lavonte and Devin be two second-year linebackers that we kind of both just said isn't necessarily a fit to be an every down inside linebacker and
Right.
rookie inside linebacker. I think what the Bucs do as great as any team out there is that they have guys within the organization, because it's such a tight-knit locker room.
Mhm.
They have players that are willing to help other guys. I mean, we talked about Blaine Gabbert and Ryan Griffin helping Tom Brady when he got here. We talked about the young secondary helping Richard Sherman when Richard Sherman got here. And then when Sherman got hurt,
he's helping them.
him bestowing his wisdom on the entire secondary. I think that type of trait, that type of thing you could bring to the team cannot be overlooked. And that's why I would feel a little bit comfortable, even if Kevin Minter is gone. Even though Britt and Stewart have only been there for a year, there's still a lot of wisdom they can bring to that. And obviously, you saw the mentor that Lavonte was to Devin White. Devin White can see that and help out who could be his future running mate when Lavonte David decides to finish his career.
No, you're exactly right. You know, the thing is they spent, again, 2 draft picks on linebackers. I think that Stewart, I agree with you. I think he's shown enough where he would have to literally bomb in training camp in the preseason to not be at least number 53 on the roster. Right? I think he is that at least the 4th inside linebacker, that special teams ace. But I'd love to see another player come in and really challenge Britt, because I think Britt, being such a late day 3 guy, I don't think he's a lock to make this team. I think he was an okay special teamer, but he wasn't in Stewart's class. And I think that they kept 5 linebackers this year. They might keep 4 next year if Minter doesn't return. But to me, there's a couple of guys in this draft class that are interesting. And it's not like linebacker is a position that is a pressing need. But again, it's kind of like you want to address it so you're not scrambling if Lavonte is out and then he decides to retire, hanging up, whatever, right? Mm-hmm. And the other thing too is listen, what can I transition into the Devin White in a second? But I want to talk about a couple of these young guys that I kind of been studying a little bit in college. But they're going to have to kind of make a decision on Devin White. And I know Devin White made the Pro Bowl this year, and I really hope that kind of energized him. And I hope he realizes that he, in my opinion, I don't think he deserved a Pro Bowl season, but I understand that he was an alternate and he's a popular player, et cetera, et cetera. So he ended up making the Pro Bowl. Sometimes that can work against you when you think you've arrived. And I think that Devin, to a degree, has maybe encountered that feeling this year. And I think that's led to some lack of focus or some dip in his play. On the other hand, it might be a thing that just completely energizes him, where he says, I want to belong here, and I want this to be the first of many, as he's tweeted out. And maybe that propels him to study even more and to become more of a student of the game and to just become a more consistent player, Matt.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is funny because before the start of this year, we all would have thought, oh yeah, Devin White, without question, like perennial Pro Bowl player. He's the anchor of this defense. He does everything. And then this year he took a little bit of a step back, but I don't want to say that the Bucs are at a crossroads, because that's not the right word, but the Bucs are in a situation here where, Devin White's going into his 4th year. And I think it's fairly obvious they're going to pick up his 5th year option, regardless if he has a season like he just did
Right.
this year. I mean, you look at it across the board, 128 tackles, as you mentioned before. That was less than what he had last year.
Yeah.
3.5 sacks. Last year, he had 9 sacks. He was
That's
second
right.
on the team in sacks and probably would have gotten double digits, but he missed a game or two because he got COVID. So all the stats, and obviously at Peter Report, we don't just look at the stats and that's it. But he
Yeah.
obviously had some issues where he was taking out his own guys. Like John Ledyard has highlighted that multiple times, where
Right.
he's taking out his own guys and has struggled in
He
pass
just
coverage.
wasn't shedding
Like,
blocks, Matt. He just
yes.
wasn't shedding blocks, right? I mean, he was getting blocked way too easily. The Jets game was just awful, right?
What,
I
he
mean,
had 2 tackles that game or something like
yes,
that? They came early.
awful. The Panthers game before that was bad as well. So he had a really, really bad stretch. I mean, he missed Lavonte David incredibly. I mean,
And that's the thing. Lavonte cleaned up a lot of the mistakes that Devin White had.
Yeah.
When Lavonte was in the lineup. And again, 2 years from now, if Lavonte's not there, if other players aren't going to be able to clean up the mess that Devin White has made, unless he can keep it a little more compact, that's an issue for the Bucs, regardless of, the core players that they have on this team with Vita Vea and hopefully Antoine Winfield Jr. A lot of the defense starts and stops with the linebacker making those splash plays.
It's an important position. And again, we're kind of talking about down the road here, right? With Lavonte David, going to be 31. And then at some point in time, whether it's 32, 33, 34, at some point in time, he's going to be done. I mean, I saw it with Derek Brooks. Derek Brooks is greatest linebacker in franchise history. Lavante's right behind him. It's a sad ending, but usually you play and then your play just falls off the cliff. And that's what it was like for Derek Brooks in 2008. It was bad. It was not good. And he was cut. A lot of Bucs fans were upset about it, and rightfully so. It was the right call. He didn't end up getting a sniff anywhere else, really. So it happens. And so I just want the Bucs to be prepared for that, because these inside linebackers in this defense are critical to stopping the run and dropping in coverage, blitzing, et cetera. They're very important pieces. And the same thing with Devin White. We're talking about the Buccaneers will pick up his 5th-year option. Okay, that's fine. He's entering year 4. Then you've got the 5th-year option. And what are you going to do after that? If this guy does not really become a much more consistent playmaker, and that's what they drafted him to be, right? That's where the 5th overall pick comes in. Is you're not just a tackles guy. You're not just 120 tackles. No, you need to be a special player. And the thing is he's going to want special money. And right now, and I've said this and I stand by it, I think right now, Devin White is a more athletic Juan Alexander, right? I don't think he is in the class of Lavonte David. I don't think he's in the class of Hardy Nickerson or Derek Brooks. But the thing is there's going to come a situation where he's at a crossroads. The Bucs are at a crossroads. And 2 years from now, if he doesn't ascend, right, are you going to want to dump 15 and it might be $20 million a season into that guy? I hope they want to, because I hope he turns into that player. But the thing is, Matt, you gotta line up some ducks here to where maybe you draft a guy and he either replaces Lavonte or Devin down the road, right?
It's wild to think, but could Devin White be gone after 5 years? It's certainly a possibility. I probably wouldn't bet on it, but it's certainly, you can't rule it out.
There was a time when Juan Alexander made the Pro Bowl. He looked like he was going to be the Bucs middle linebacker for a decade, right? I mean, Jameis Winston, there were times where you thought this was the franchise quarterback, right? It's funny how things happen, right? I mean,
exactly, Scott. And that's what I was going to say is, everyone always says that, middle linebacker, inside linebacker is the quarterback of defense. And that's true. But when you look at it as a setting up the future, finding like the next guy, I do find similarities to it as well. Obviously, you need a quarterback if you want to win in this league. But when you look at the Bucs with linebacker specifically, it's like all the best linebackers, kind of like all the best quarterbacks, they don't get to free agency because you sign them to a long-term extension beforehand. If they're really good enough, you don't even need to think twice about it. They're going to be on this team for a very long time, if not, over a decade. And right now we're seeing Devin White, and he's got 2 years to change narrative. So let's keep that in mind as well too. But right now, Devin White, he's running into that situation. And I don't want to give a direct comparison to quarterback because people would flip out, but Devin White's good, but he's not good enough to
Right.
deserve all that money, but he's not bad enough where you don't want
Right.
to cut him outright. You know, it's almost like a Baker Mayfield.
You wanna
Like
see
again, I don't want
more.
to, I don't
No,
want
you're
to,
right.
I don't want to compare because people can be like, "Are you comparing Devin White to Baker Mayfield?"
Yeah.
I'm not. But in terms of the situation of you're good, but you're not good enough, but you're not too bad to get rid of
Right.
you, it's you're jumping through hoops here, but that's essentially where the Bucs find themselves.
Well, yeah, and listen, it's up to Devin, and it's up to the new inside linebackers coach to get him on the track, and hopefully the Pro Bowl, this 14 flag pulls in the supposed sack and air quotes of Mac Jones is going to springboard him into a 2022 season that we hoped he would have had from the Super Bowl, springboarding him into a really
Yeah.
productive 2021 season. I just don't think that he had a Pro Bowl season. Uh, Long lost leisure with a good comment. Devin White should be Micah Parsons, and the thing is Micah Parsons is a force, right? He is a
Yes.
force on the
In
field.
multiple ways, not just
Yes.
a pass rusher, but
Right.
people look at him as that, but that's not the case.
Yep. Okay, so let's address the elephant in the room here, right? I know this is about inside and outside linebackers. It's just difficult to think that no one knows about the most important position. And I'll say this real quick. Yes, there was comments made by Tom Brady. I just got through watching Man in the Arena last night of all things. I watched
Nice.
the last show. What a fantastic episode! What a fantastic series that is. That's so well done. I can't wait to see the ones on Tampa Bay. You know they're
Yeah.
coming, right? Those are really going to be good. I know Brady said never say never. I don't think Tom Brady's coming back. There's nobody at the team headquarters that feels that either. They feel that he's done. It's just I think it's just a thing where he loves football so much he doesn't want to permanently close the door. But I don't think he is going to be going for the door anytime soon. I think he is in that chair, resting, enjoying his family. I don't see that changing.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, one of the things that makes Tom Brady the GOAT is his preparation.
Yeah.
You know, so he's not just going to all of a sudden, I believe his birthday is in August. I think it's already during training camp, but say it's
Yeah.
early August. He's like, you know what? All of a sudden, I kind of feel like playing. Let me call Jason Light and,
Yeah.
you know, we'll get this thing going again.
Yeah.
Tom Brady's all about preparation. It's why he's the
Agreed.
greatest quarterback of all time. It's why he's the GOAT. And there's also a blueprint, too. I think it's important to learn from just the whole situation that was years ago, but like Brett Favre retiring, unretiring, going to the Jets, retiring, going to the Vikings. I don't think quarterbacks, especially Hall of Fame quarterbacks, want to be in that type of scenario again. So I think he learned from something like that and says, that's not for me.
I'm with you on that. So we've spent some time talking about some of the needs and inside linebacker. I don't know if they will go out and get a veteran free agent. It made sense with Minter because he knows Todd Bowles' system. I'm not sure there's a glaring guy out there that's worth investing in. And the thing is you're going to want to pay whoever to come in if you're going to pay a free agent really cheap money. I mean, let's not forget Kevin Minter was on the veteran minimum. So
100%. So yeah, I looked it up, Scott. Here's the top linebackers per PFF: Devondre Campbell, Donta Hightower, Foyesade Olukin. I don't know how to pronounce that, but from San Fran.
And I like him. The thing is when you look at the names that you're mentioning, those are expensive guys.
Yes, they're averaging his they're
at
averaging him at 10 million. So there's a couple of guys, Alexander Johnson, Leighton Vander Esch, even those guys are at 8.5. The cheapest one they have on here is Kaiser White, who's at 4.75 million per season, which is still out of the Bucs price range.
Exactly.
So yeah, free agent inside linebacker, not really happening this year unless it's very, very on the cheap.
I think if they're going to address the position, and maybe they just ride with Britton Stewart and just say, we're going to develop these guys and we'll address the position, kick the can down the road. And they might do that. There are a couple guys that I think are Bucs fits that maybe Bucs fans should keep an eye on. One of the guys was somebody that you saw at the Senior Bowl, right? And I know that Georgia's got a lot of players coming out in this year's draft, but Channing Tindall is a player that really kind of flies under the radar. He's not one of the quote unquote name guys. like a Trayvon Walker or Jordan Davis, or Lewis Sine. But he's a fast linebacker. When you're talking about Bucs linebackers, it's speed, speed, speed. 6'2", 230 pounds. The best thing about Tyndall was it really, and the thing with Georgia that makes Georgia a little tough to kind of evaluate
because they're
is
all great.
yes, well they are, but and the reason why they're all great is because they have so many great players, right? I mean, believe it or not, Jordan Davis and John and I were talking about this. I think Jordan Davis was the third best defensive tackle in Georgia last year, in my opinion, and I would put Devonta White at 2, and I think Carter is number 88 is the best, and he's a sophomore. He's not eligible to come out, but I think he's the best one. But the thing is they rotate so many guys at linebacker, at defensive line, that none of these guys really play a full game. And so Channing Tyndall is a player that really didn't play, which you would say, starter role until this past season. But 63 tackles, he only missed 5 tackles, which is stunning for a linebacker. That's a very low number.
Music to Todd Bowles' ears.
Yes, right. I mean, because that was a problem, and not just at the secondary, but it was at the linebacker level too. Devin White missed his share, but this was a consistent player. Looked at his Pro Football Focus grades: 81.9 in coverage, 81.5 pass rush grade, 73.7 run defense grade. Those are fantastic grades, and it's hard to find a linebacker that can really do all three well. And again, that's what the Bucs want to see from their linebackers. You got to be able to blitz, got to be able to cover, got to be able to stuff the run. And he had 67 tackles, 7.5 tackles for loss, 5.5 sacks, and a forced fumble last year. And I think this is a player that if you're sticking true to your board, Matt, and if you are, if you're making the conscious effort to stay on your board, and if he happens to be there, maybe in the 3rd round, and he's the highest rated player, you might pull the trigger on this guy. He's that good.
Yeah, Scott, that's a great find by you. And I'll admit I was looking at a lot of guys there. I'm not going to come out here and say Tyndall was really a guy that stood out to me, but everything you just laid out clearly makes him suitable. That consistency more than anything else. The Bucs would absolutely love to have someone like that. There were 2 other linebackers though at the Senior Bowl that stood out to me, and one guy you're very high on, so I know he's a fit for the Bucs. And another guy I just really loved his his relentlessness, his pursuit of the ball. That's Troy Anderson. I thought was great the whole week. His last year of college football,
Montana State.
He had 147 tackles or 148 tackles in his last year of football. Listen, I don't care what conference you're in. I don't care if it's the Big 12, the Pac-10, the NCAA, or the YMCA. It doesn't matter. If you're making that many tackles in a season, you're on point. And obviously the practice is more important than the game. And I just thought the way he would go from sideline to sideline, pitches to the outside, he'd be one of the first guys there. Just that pursuit of the ball, I always enjoy in a player. And I felt too in the Senior Bowl itself, you heard his name a bunch of times. Right. And don't get me wrong, every player there is there to make an impact, to impress the scouts, the GMs, everyone watching.
Yep.
But even on top of that, there were some guys that it just looked like they wanted it a little bit more. And I would put Troy Anderson in that category. Another guy too, you heard his name a lot during the Senior Bowl, was Chad Muma from Wyoming.
Yeah.
I hope I'm pronouncing that right.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I just thought, for me, obviously the key, especially if you're going to play in a Bucs defense, is the speed, which you've already talked about, and the vision. And I just felt he was one of those guys. Again, he could go from sideline to sideline, very active in many plays, but he knew where the play was going and he could get there. Again, pitches to the outside, one of the first guys there. So those are really 2 linebackers that stood out to me at the Senior Bowl.
Yeah, and I think, again, I'm not saying that this team is going into this draft saying we have to have an inside linebacker. I'm not saying that at all, because you've got 2 starters, right? And they're under contract for the next couple of years. It's not an immediate need, but you do need to think down the road. Maybe they bring back Mentor, right, and see if he has some juice left for training camp. It wouldn't hurt to bring him back on a 1-year deal. But I'm just saying, since we're talking about the position, don't be surprised if they maybe try to upgrade a little bit over Britt, because I don't think there's a clear-cut number 3 linebacker on this team. I think you've got your starters, and then you've got kind of like a missing spot on the depth chart. Then you've got really your number 4 and 5 linebackers in Stewart and Britt. Two other players. These are Darian Butler was supposed to be. I'm sorry, not Darian Butler. Terrell Bernard from Baylor was supposed to be at the Senior Bowl and didn't end up making it. I'm assuming it's an injury or something, but
it was a hamstring, I believe.
Yeah, he was the MVP of the bowl game, the bowl win over Ole Miss. And I watch a lot of Big 12 football, being a Kansas State guy. Don't like Baylor, but they got some good players on defense. Jalen Petrie.
Petrie was great this week during the Senior Bowl and in the game too. Oh, I think Scott cut out. I'm not sure. Or maybe I cut out. Oh, okay. I guess you guys can hear me. Just wanted to make sure from that. Scott will be back soon. I think he cut out yesterday as well, too. So I will keep the show going. We will get to we still got outside linebackers to talk about, too, which is great. So we still got a whole show to talk about with that. But the Senior Bowl, and I'm curious to see who Scott was about to talk about. But Jalen Petrie, I really thought the Baylor guys really stepped it up in the Senior Bowl. Jalen Petrie was all over the place. He was getting stops up at the front. He had pinpoint, extremely tight coverage as the game was going on, or as the practice week was going on too. So Petrie is a guy, I don't necessarily think he's going to go to the Bucs, but you know, if you're a fan of football, he's going to be great. All right, we got Scott back here with us.
Yeah, unfortunately, we're having some rain over here in Tampa, and I think that's messing with my internet signal. So yeah, I heard what you were saying about Petrie. Very good player. I think he's kind of a Bucs fit as well. Darian Butler's the last guy we'll talk about. Then we'll get to the outside linebackers. This is probably a day 3 guy that would come in and compete with Britt as a special teams role. Again, you're looking for kind of a certain body type, speed, coverage ability to rush the quarterback. He had some missed tackle issues as well. You're not getting a perfect product on day 3. 54 tackles. He missed 20 according to Pro Football Focus. So you can teach tackling. That is something that if you have the want to and the good technique, you can become a better tackler. But this is a very good coverage guy, even better than Bernard, who had 3 interceptions last year at Baylor. For Arizona State, Darian Butler had an 87.7 coverage grade, Matt. That's better than some defensive backs. He had 4 career sacks, 2 last year, 3 interceptions last season, 3 pass breakups, 3 forced fumbles, 4 fumble recoveries. He's around the ball. He's a playmaker for the Sun Devils, and I think he's a player that could be on the Bucs' radar on day 3.
Yeah, well, we'll see how it goes. The beauty of this all is that the Bucs have a couple of different options.
Yeah,
whether it's at inside linebacker or outside linebacker, which we'll get to in a second. But I think that's fun. Like in a couple of years, when the Bucs went to go draft Devin White, we kind of knew it was a foregone conclusion.
Yeah.
This year, it's all over the place. Like the first 3 to 4 rounds, will they go wide receiver? Will they pick a running back in the 3rd round? There's so many different options, which, again, we haven't really seen in the past couple of years. And I think that makes the draft way more fun than it has been.
Yeah, it most certainly does. And because last year even, we nailed the draft pick of Joe Tryon-Shoyinka.
Well, you always get at least one. Bucs fans.
Well, we try.
SR's best bets. It's no one's automatic, but you are as close as it really gets to it. So I'm excited to see what you got.
I appreciate that. We got the first 2 last year, Kyle Trask and in our mock, and number 2, also a Bucs best bet at quarterback. We'll see this year. Like you said, Matt, it's a little concerning because
it's tough for sledding this year.
Yeah,
but
they could go in a lot of different directions. That's why we're covering a lot of bases here. But listen, folks, if you want to have your bases covered from a financial standpoint, you need to do that with our friends over at Immuni Financial.
At Immuni Financial, we help you live in the now.
Congratulations. We're so happy for you.
Thank you. And even though the now may feel very different, you still need to plan for the future.
How's retirement treating you?
Oh, just fantastic.
I know I say it all the time, but you really got to come up to Colorado.
Let's do it.
All right.
Yeah.
We can help you develop that plan to keep you on track so you can still prepare for tomorrow, today. Muni Financial. Plan ahead, stay ahead.
Matt, we got to get to Colorado, man. Managing
to.
your family's wealth means more to Muni Financial than simply allocating your assets. It means legacy planning, brokerage and advisory services, retirement accounts, college savings accounts, and insurance services. With over 40 years of experience, do what I did. Let Muni Financial help you plan ahead and stay ahead. Do what I did, folks. Call Muni, talk to David, talk to Mark at 1-800-868-6864. It's a free, no risk, no obligation consultation where they'll take a look at your finances, make some suggestions, and then set you up with some services to help you make more money with your own money, or save money if you need to do that for your college kids, savings accounts, etc. Make sure you visit amuni.com on the web, amuni.com. All right, Matt. So let's get to a position that's kind of near and dear to my heart. I love pass rushers. I love defensive line. We're talking about outside linebackers here in Tampa, of course. And the Buccaneers, they've got a guy in Shaq Barrett, who is, I think, still one of the more premier pass rushers in this league. There were a couple of games this year where he was little invisible, but I think by and large, he kind of rebounded, had a 10-sack season, had the big interception versus
the Eagles in the playoffs.
Yeah, and also had one against the Falcons too. So he had two interceptions, kind of pulled a JPP there. But I think that Barrett is a player that I think can benefit from playing on the right side. And I know that Jason Pierre-Paul liked to occupy the right side. JPP is going to be a free agent, and let's start with those two guys first. I think Shaq Barrett is still got plenty of juice left in the tank, and I'd like to see Tryon-Shoyinka play opposite him. But what are your thoughts on Jason Pierre-Paul possibly coming back, Matt? Should they re-sign him? He's 33 years old.
Right.
Going to have a rotator cuff surgery, had knee surgery last offseason, had neck surgery the year before. How much juice does this guy have left in the tank?
Right. He can't really stay healthy now. And I'm curious how he would look after getting a rotator cuff surgery, because you could clearly tell it bothered him all season long, and he missed a number of games because of it. He still toughed it out and played a majority of the season. But I will say, even with a quote-unquote healthy JPP after a rotator cuff injury, the reason that I would lean towards not re-signing JPP more than anything else is I don't want it to stunt the growth of Tryon-Shoyinka.
I agree.
JTS had enough playing time this year where he had 4 sacks. He missed a number of other ones where he could have maybe doubled it or at least got to 6 on the year. He's got enough. He's bitten off enough of the sandwich where it's like, all right, now I want the whole thing. We've seen him enough as a starter or in significant playing time where I think we're confident enough that he can play an entire game. I want to see how much growth JTS can get. How much more can he develop from playing a full season, knowing he's a starter, and not having to worry about, I'm going to sit on the bench for the first quarter and not get in until the second. I'm only going to get 20 snaps a game. I have to keep my body loose and ready to go. I think we could see a great JTS next season. And I don't really want to knock JPP. I think fully healthy, he can still go out there and help a team and even help the Bucs in a veteran leadership role. But you drafted JTS in the first round for a reason. Don't hold him back. All right.
You let him clear the deck.
Let him fly. Let him go. Let him do his thing. And I like having Anthony Nelson as a number 3 outside linebacker because he improved a ton this year. He had 5 sacks on the year. That was one more than JTS and less playing time. But yeah, I like JPP. Just you got to let Tryon-Shoyinka do his thing. He's earned it. Give him the keys.
I totally agree. And I think that the problem with JPP is he is an alpha. He is an alpha personality. You can't just re-sign the guy and say, you're going to be our situational pass rusher. he
doesn't operate that way.
He doesn't operate that way. He believes in himself so much that he wants to be out there as much as possible. That's his track record, playing 90% of the snaps with the Giants back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
So, and even in his first couple of years in Tampa. So I think that this franchise has to do what's right for JTS, not JPP, and move on. Because I think even JPP coming back, even if you wait and sign him in training camp, and bring him in on a 1-year deal and stuff, it's still going to cost you too much money because he's a veteran. And I just think it's time to turn the page. Now, the thing is when it was just Cam Gill and Anthony Nelson and JTS, there was not enough pass rush. There just wasn't. When Shaq Barrett was out, when he missed the last couple games of the season, due to that knee injury he suffered in the second quarter of the Carolina game, you kind of saw the wheels fall off the wagon a little bit in terms of the outside pass rush. So I like Tryon, Nelson, and Gill, but I do think they need to add another pass rusher to the mix this year. And the problem is you don't want to go out there and spend a bunch of money on an edge rusher, right? Because then you got to start him. That's almost kind of the situation with Jason Pierre-Paul. You've got your first-round draft pick invested in Tryon-Shoyinka. He is the starter. And I think you start him on the left side. And then you start Shaq Barrett on the right side. I think that you can flip-flop those guys a little bit to try to change it up and give the opposing offensive lines different looks. But, Matt, I think that Shaq Barrett, back in his 19.5 sack season, got more of his sacks from the right side, going one-on-one against left tackles. And I think that it's too easy to chip on the right side with a tight end, with the back, and negate your best pass rusher. And Shaq Barrett is your best pass rusher. So put him in the best situation for those one-on-ones that's going against left tackles. And I'd like to see that happen. And that again, is not going to happen with JPP because he prefers the right side. Tryon-Shoyinka has the size at 265, the length. He's a more physical player than Shaq is, just due to his size. And I think that you put him at home base and say, you're going to become a dominant left defensive end, a left outside linebacker in this scheme, and just let him go there.
Yeah, and let's not forget that JTS also had to line up on the inside because, again, they wanted JPP to play, so they lined up JTS on certain pass rush situations. And there's a lot of times that Tryon-Shoyinka lined up in pass coverage. I mean, most notably the playoff game against the Eagles. A lot of times he was a spy on Jalen Hurts. So, yeah, I would love to just see Tryon-Shoyinka just not have to think as much, just focus on being on the outside. And it's funny, too, with Shaq Barrett, because we've asked Todd Bowles about, why not just line him up on the one side? And Todd Bowles has said, we line him up on both sides. And then you look at the stats, it's like that clearly just was not the case,
Yeah, and I think the thing too is Larry Foote even said, I let those guys figure it out, right? And Shaq Barrett is not an alpha personality. JPP is. JPP, his personality rules the room.
I could just see Shaq Barrett being like, yeah, I'm fine, man. Whatever you want to do.
Exactly. No, you're right. So I think the thing is with Anthony Nelson, and again, when you're drafting, Matt, it's not just for this year. You're looking down the road. Anthony Nelson is in a contract here, right?
Mm-hmm.
And is he a 5-sack guy? Is he an 8-sack guy? Right? He's how much playing time is he going to get to where we can continue to see the growth? Right? He's not a starting caliber guy, right? He's not Shaq. He's not JTS. But is he a Carl Nassib type? Can he be a guy that's a 6 to 8 sack guy and really kind of help you out? I think he, as you mentioned, Matt, really kind of developed into that role at the end of the season, really kind of came on down the stretch.
Yeah, I'm really interested to see what he can do this year, to see if he can continue that. Because he's got to understand at this point, he knows his role. And even like last year, too, he got a lot more playing time because JPP was so hurt. And even when he was playing, you want to give him some breaks. And Shaq getting hurt at the end, they want to give him some breaks. But if JTS is your starting outside linebacker, I see no reason why you really have to take him off the field that much. I mean, he's a second-year player. He's extremely young. He doesn't really need any time off. Maybe they'll get Nelson on the field in opportunities where maybe Shaq needs to to take a couple reps off, and then you can get him in there.
Right.
And I do just want to say about Cam Gill too. I love Cam Gill.
I do too.
I tried, Cam the Thrill Gill, tried to get that going. Didn't really stick. I love his speed. It was awesome that he got the half sack in the Super Bowl. He had a sack and a half this year, but he's clearly, he's not big enough. He's got speed, but he's great in a situation where, oh, hey, I didn't expect him to be on the field, and he's going against very tired offensive linemen. He's fast and he can get around and make some plays, but he's only good for 5 or 10 plays to get that little, surprise factor. So I like Cam Gill. He can make the roster, but I don't really see him doing too much.
So the thing is, if this team does move on from Jason Pierre-Paul, as you and I are kind of suggesting, and we're anticipating that they're going to, especially due to the age, the injury, the salary, then your quartet is JTS, Shaq, Anthony Nelson, and Cam Gill. And again, we talked about Anthony Nelson being in a contract year, and he might blow up a little bit to where you have to let him go in free agency, right? So they need to add another pass rusher to the hopper, and you'd rather draft a guy and develop him for a year or two, because it's hard. As JTS found out this year, should have had probably 8 sacks, only had 4, right? Because he's got some things to learn. But one of the guys that really flashed at the Senior Bowl is Jermaine Johnson from Florida State. And the thing is
1,000%.
He would look fantastic in red and pewter. The problem is when I was talking to some people in the scouting community about Jermaine Johnson from Florida State, because this is a player that started off at Georgia, didn't really see much of the field because of all of the talent there at Georgia. So he transferred to Florida State, where he had an absolutely fantastic season, over 10 sacks, forced fumbles, and was just a relentless player, a very physical player against the run and the pass. I think that with the Senior Bowl, he goes out there and dominates the week of practice. Doesn't even play in the game. He didn't
even practice on Thursday, Scott. Yeah. He was so dominant just from start to finish in so many different ways: speed, physicality, dominating all over the field, that he was done practicing Wednesday because he had done enough. He was clearly the best player on the field in the Senior Bowl.
That's right. And just as Slave 509 says, he played himself into the top 20. The Bucs won't get him. That's right. so he's not going to. Now, it's interesting because we had Arnold Epichetti in our mock draft, not ruling him out, not ruling him in. He didn't flash as much as I would hope he would at the Senior Bowl during the week of practice. Didn't play in the game. Jesse Luketa actually
he was good.
He was good in the
game, I believe.
He did. And it's crazy because he only had 1 sack at Penn State in his entire career. 1. So
go figure.
Listen, I will say this about the Senior Bowl is sometimes, and it's just my experience, when you look at the Senior Bowl, you really have to look at who the players that they're facing, whether it's in practice or in the game.
Oh, yeah.
Right, like Minnesota's Boye Mafe is a name who really kind of flashed, and he got a sack and a half, I think, in the game. He's beating up against some chump players.
The offensive line that they were going against was really bad, and that was the case not just in the game. That was the case since Tuesday. Right. It was downhill from there.
It was like Zion Johnson, Trevor Penning, and then everybody else, right? I mean, Derek Kennard was okay, but I'm just saying that there's only a couple of really, really good starting caliber offensive linemen in this game, and just a bunch of developmental guys. So sometimes, like the Perion Winfrey's, I mean, he had a couple sacks in the game. He looked good, but who is he getting those sacks against? That's what you really got to understand, and when you go back and look at the film. So I love Johnson. I think he's a fine player. One of the players that really that I was really curious about at the Senior Bowl was D'Angelo Malone from Western Kentucky. Yep. Right. D'Angelo Malone is a player that I've kind of been following for the last couple of years, and I'm just was concerned about him because of his slight build. Right. He's 6'4". About 235 pounds, 240 pounds, I think is what they listed him at. He had a phenomenal season. And granted, this is Conference USA, so it's not Power 5 school. But back in 2019, he had 99 tackles, 20 and a half tackles for loss, 11 sacks, and a fumble recovery for a touchdown. And then he followed that up with 6 sacks, as a senior, then kind of had like a super senior year due to COVID, where he put on a little bit more weight, because honestly he was playing around 225. But last year he had 94 tackles, 17 and a half tackles for loss, got his sacks back up to 8, broke up 4 passes, and forced 4 fumbles. This guy is kind of an Energizer bunny, and he's a wiry player. Reminds me a little bit of a little bit less talented Leonard Floyd coming out of Georgia a couple years ago. Floyd was a first-round pick of the Bears. Didn't really live up to the billing in Chicago, but has become a really good player for the Rams. And I just think he's kind of a Bucs fit. He's tenacious. He's got speed. And Matt, that's what you look for when you're looking for outside linebackers in Tampa Bay. It's speed, speed, speed.
Yeah, 1,000%. And he set the tone early in that game. Again, I know we look more into the practice in the game itself, but I believe he had the first sack in the game. So he was, he's a guy that really sets the tone. I always enjoy watching the players from the smaller schools, because you can always tell a little bit that they want to prove that they can stick with the big name guys. So he was definitely a guy that made an impact when he was there. I think made the most of his opportunities. Another guy that I want to watch some more tape on before I really, come to the decision on him. But he made some good plays in practice. He had a sack in the game as well. Was Ohio State's Tyreek Smith. I was watching him on the one-on-ones. Yeah. And I really liked his bend. I know John's a big bend guy, and I think that's important for an edge rusher. You have the speed and the bend to get to the outside. I'm curious if he has a couple more moves to go along with that, or if that's just kind of his bread and butter. And if he wins, he wins. And if he doesn't, he doesn't. But he was a guy that just, he piqued my interest a little bit when I was out there.
Yeah. Yeah. And for him, it's just about overcoming the lack of production, right? It's just like Jesse Luketa, like the one sack, right? That's kind of damning. But sometimes you're a late bloomer. Sometimes it's the circumstance. You don't get the reps or whatever. But for Tyreek Smith, he had 7 sacks in his Ohio State career, and he really wasn't a full-time starter until this past season, but he had 3 sacks as a sophomore, 1 sack last year as a junior, and then this previous season, 3 sacks. So he's not a big-time sack producer. Sometimes it's not all about the sacks. He's a bigger guy, but is he the kind of guy that's going to bring a lot of heat and juice? The track record doesn't say that, but that's kind of why you dig into these guys during the scouting process. You analyze how he did at the Senior Bowl. You take a look at what he does and how he tests athletically. So he's somebody that kind of flashed to me in the game as well. And that's what's great about these games. The East West Shrine and the Senior Bowl is you see players not on their teams and different elements going up against different players they haven't played against before. And sometimes it makes you have to dig back into the tape and reevaluate things. And
to your points,
different context.
Right. And to your point, Scott, too, I think there's certain players, and I'm not really going to name anyone specifically, but I think there's certain guys that dominate in practice, and then it doesn't really show up in games. And there's guys that, for whatever reason, the production's not there in practice, but then when the stakes are higher, playing on the field on Saturday or Sunday, they just turn it up a notch and go out there and perform to great standards. So it's each player is very different. It just makes this draft process such an interesting one, because not every recipe is the same every single year and every single interview.
No, you're right.
It's a lot of fun.
The good news for the Buccaneers, Matt, is they're in pretty good hands. They've got to get a new inside linebackers coach. We believe it might be James Betcher. We'll see how all that pans out with Mike Caldwell going to the Jacksonville Jaguars. Devin White's coming off that Pro Bowl season. Lavonte David returns. So you've got starters there at inside linebackers. They're going to have to find either someone to replace Kevin Minter or maybe challenge Minter for that number 3 linebacker position in camp. And then the outside linebacker position, the biggest question mark is, did they re-sign Jason Pierre-Paul? I don't think anybody in the Pewter Report staff thinks that's going to happen, nor are we endorsing the move that it should. I love Jason Pierre-Paul. He's been an absolute warrior. At some point in time, though, it's time to move on. And I've come to that conclusion with the Warren Sapps and the Derek Brookses and the John Lynches way back in the day. And I think it's time for Jason Pierre-Paul. to call it a day. And I think, Matt, you bring up a good point. You've got to clear the deck for JTS to develop, and that doesn't really happen if Jason Pierre-Paul returns to Tampa.
I want to see Jason Pierre-Paul playing football. I just want to see it in another uniform.
Yeah, well said. Yep.
Yeah,
but they have Shaq Barrett. They've got Anthony Nelson coming back for his contract year. Cam Gill developing, I think, made some strides this year. But I suspect we're going to see a linebacker get drafted, whether it's an inside linebacker or outside linebacker. I think that's safe to say. I think they'll probably address that position more so in the draft than free agency, because again, they like to get these younger guys in because those are the type of bodies that help out in special teams. We even saw Joe Tryon-Shoyinka play a lot of special teams this year, covering kicks and punts.
Oh, sorry, you cut out there for a second, so I didn't hear it.
I was just saying, these guys with the body types, they help out in special teams, right? So
yes, they do.
That's why I think you'll see the Bucs draft an inside linebacker or an outside linebacker this year to continue to help on punt and kick coverage.
That was one of the big things that Bruce Arians spoke about almost right away when Joe Tryon-Shoyinka got drafted. It was, yes, he's a good pass rusher. He's a physical specimen, but he loves playing football. And that's actually, you and I spoke to Jimmy Lake when he was on the Peter Report podcast.
Yep.
And he said he's a guy that loves football. And Bruce Arians was speaking about that, he would be great on special teams. So you saw him play that this year. He's a guy that could do it all. And Scott, there's it's one guy that owns this place, but another place that can do it all is Pin Chasers, one of our proud sponsors of the Peter Report podcast. There it is, the logo right there. Pin Chasers, we just finished up our Peter Report Bowling League back in December. It seems like a while now. There will be another league coming up in the spring, but this is a great place to go and bring your family, bring your friends. It's fun for a night out with a group of people. It'd be great to go on a day like today where it's cloudy and rainy, but you got a full experience when you're at Pin Chasers. There are events literally every single night. You got all you can eat pizza on Tuesdays. You got all you can bowl on Thursdays with $1 Miller Lights. I mean, the football season's winding down, so there's a lot of other fun events, and basketball stinks right now. The Olympics are on, so you can go have some Miller Lights, go watch.
The food is so good, Matt.
What's up?
The food is so good.
Yes, and that's the best part. I said basketball stinks, not the food. The food is amazing. Yeah. And you can have breakfast food. You can have it at any time. The waiters and waitresses, they bring it right to your lane where you're bowling, so you don't have to worry about getting up and going over a billion different times. So make sure you go to pinchasers.net to reserve a lane or book a future party. It's a very fun night out with friends and family. And the owner, Anthony, is a huge Bucs fan. So you're supporting a fellow Buccaneers fan.
Anthony Peroni, great, loyal Peter Report reader for, years and years and years.
Very long time.
An advertising partner with us for years. We love Pin Chasers. I might even take the kids over to the one here in Zephyr Hills. I live closer to that one.
Yes, multiple locations.
Yeah.
So that's the beauty.
Zephyr Hills, and 2 in Tampa. No doubt about it. Matt, really good stuff today talking linebackers. The fun continues tomorrow, folks, when John Ledyard returns. He and I will be talking about Bucs cornerbacks. And then, Matt, you might be back on Thursday to talk safeties with John. So we're going to get all of the defensive positions out of the way this week as we continue our look at the breakdowns for the Bucs and their offseason needs and a couple of names that we think to keep an eye on as this draft process rolls on, right? We've got the combine coming up next, then the pro days. So it's going to be a fun offseason. And you got free agency in there too.
Yep.
So buckle up, folks. It's going to be a busy offseason. This roster is not anywhere close to being done. But we'll be back tomorrow on the Pewter Report podcast at 4 o'clock Eastern. So for Matt Matera, I'm Scott Reynolds saying thanks for joining us. And we'll see you next time on the Pewter Report podcast. Out.
Let's get some sunshine back in Tampa soon.
No kidding, man.